In this video, we're going to use the concepts from the first two equation solving basics videos, but we're actually going to include fractions this time. So let's start with the equation 4x plus 1/2 equals 2/3. Let's try to solve that equation for x. And before we do that, a couple of notes. One, if you want some review of fractions, you can go to the linked videos on adding and subtracting fractions, as well as multiplying and dividing fractions. And the other note is, I just wanted to say that all of these equations we've been solving in these last three videos, they're all called linear equations. These are all linear equations. And they're all called linear equations because of the power on x. The power on x is actually just a 1. And we don't write it in there, but there is an imaginary 1 in there, in that equation. If the power on x is 1, it's called a linear equation, and that's what we've been solving in these equation solving basics. Okay, now let's actually get to solving this equation. The first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of this minus 1/2. And the way that we do that is we actually add 1/2 to both sides of the equation. On the left side, 4x minus 1/2 plus 1/2, the 1/2s cancel each other out and you're just left with a 4x. On the right side of the equation, you have something that's a little more complicated than what we've done before. It's 2/3 plus 1/2. And the question is, how do you add those two fractions? Again, go to the other videos for a review on adding fractions. But the way that we do this is we find a common denominator. The 2/3, we're actually going to multiply by a 2/2. And the 1/2, we're going to multiply by a 3/3. What that's going to do is it's going to get us a common denominator of 6. The left-hand side is still 4x. And now the right-hand side, how do we multiply those fractions through? We multiply across the numerator. 2 times 2 is going to give us 4. 2 times 3 is going to give us 6. 1 times 3 is going to give us a 3 in the numerator. And 2 times 3 is going to give us a 6 in the denominator. Now that those fractions have a common denominator, they have the same denominator, we can actually just combine them very easily. Still, the left-hand side is 4x. We haven't done anything over there. On the right side, we have 4 plus 3 over 6, which is 7/6. Okay, now how do we get the x by itself? That comes down to removing this 4, which is multiplying the x. Well, since the 4 is multiplying the x, what we're going to do is we're going to divide by 4. On the right-hand side, what we have now is 7/6 divided by 4. And probably the easiest way to do this is to think of the 4 as a 4 divided by 1. On the left-hand side of the equation, we have x. On the right-hand side of the equation, we have 7/6 divided by 4/1. The way you divide fractions, you can look it up in the linked video, but what you do is you take the fraction that's in the bottom, and you take its reciprocal, and you multiply by its reciprocal. I've heard this called copy.flop from some of my students in the past. You're copying down the first fraction, 7/6, and you're multiplying, that's the dot, and you're flopping, or I guess flipping, or taking the reciprocal of the denominator. 4/1 turns into 1/4. Anyway, so that's how you divide fractions. You actually turn it into a multiplication problem. Now we have 7 times 1 in the numerator, that's just 7, and 6 times 4 in the denominator is 24. So the answer to this problem is x equals 7/24. Now it's probably a good idea to actually check that solution. There's a lot of room for error in there, so it's a good idea to make sure that we did everything right. So we're going to check. The way that we've been doing that is we copy down the original equation, 4x minus 1/2 equals 2/3. And we're going to substitute our solution into that original equation. Our solution was 7/24. We're going to take that and we're going to plug it in for x right here in the equation. So I'm just going to erase the x and plug in a 7/24. Now the question is that a true statement? Is that equation true? And if it is, we know that our solution is correct. It's going to take a little bit of work to actually see if that's true or not. So let's see, the easiest way to do this is probably going to be to think of that 4 as a 4 over 1. The 4 in the numerator actually is going to cancel with the 24 in the denominator, and we're going to get, let's see, some cancellation here. 1 there cancels with the 24, and you get left with a 6. And now this first fraction becomes 7 over 6. Copy down the rest of the equation, and you have 7/6 minus 1/2 equals 2/3. I'm still not really sure if that's true, so we should do maybe one more step of work to verify to see if that's true. The way that you do that is you find a common denominator on the left side of the equation. That would involve multiplying the second fraction by 3 over 3. And again, if you want some assistance with fractions, you can go to the linked videos and get you all caught up. This left fraction, we're just going to copy it down. It's 7/6. This fraction right here becomes a 3 over 6. The question is that 2/3? Well, I'm still not sure. 7 minus 3 is 4. So the left-hand side is 4/6. Is that the same thing as 2/3? Okay, now I'm convinced. Our solution, x equals 7 over 24, is the correct solution. Good. Okay, it's time for a video quiz. And the video quiz for this lesson is solve for x. And the equation you're going to be solving is 1/2 x plus 1/3 equals 1/12. And then when you finish solving that equation for x, you can check your solution, and you should check your solution. To make sure that you got it right. Hand all that in class, and I'll see you in the next video.